start off, could you state your name and the rank you made it to in service?
Okay. Donald Henry Ebner, and I was the E5 Sergeant, First Class in the Army, and I had the I wore 5 stripes.
Where did you do your training for the Army?
Uh, Most of our training was at our facilities at Buffalo, Minnesota. We had summer camp at Camp McCoy, Wisconsin, and down at Fort Knox, Kentucky. We alternated every other year because Fort Knox is was the armor center of the United States, so they had the armor equipment down there. But Camp McCoy was every other year spot.
What job did you serve in the Army?
I started I started out with easy positions, and I worked my way up. At my final position, I was a sergeant, field first sergeant, wearing the E5 stripes as a tank commander and the actually the platoon leader over the 5 tanks in our company in the field.
So referring to basic training, what were the first couple weeks like?
Our basic training it was really different. It was tough back in those days. They were hard on the kids. We had Sergeant Glass, I don't know what you call him, our PT trainer, or our leader was a dedicated Army guy, and he was just tough on everybody. Tough for PT, tough in the barracks, and so I would say it was strict. It was a kind of a different kind of a life. Little more than I expected coming out of just a small town. But the interesting thing was just being with the other kids. You learn a lot by living with different people from different parts of the country. We had kids from Chicago. We had kids from the South, and find out that there's a lot of different kind of human beings, and it was a good experience overall, but a tough experience. The basic training, the first 8 weeks are basically just physical and just getting used to the Army life, and then after that, when you go into the advanced training for armor, then it gets a little bit more work-like. But the first 8 weeks of basic are just pretty tough times. They were strict about the barracks and everything else, and the inspections were really tough. And KP was once in a lifetime duty. We got up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and then we got done about 10 o'clock at night, and that was a long day. It was really interesting.
After your basic training, how was the training like when you started to train for your specialized job?
That was a little bit more workmanlike. We had the armor equipment, and the main thing was learning about tanks, learning their capabilities, how to take care of them, maintain them, and operate them. And so it kind of fell into jobs according to your abilities in a way. I mean, guys that wanted to be drivers became tank drivers, and guys that didn't have that gung-ho attitude toward driving would never make good tank drivers. So it kind of fell into the capabilities, and it appeared that those that had leadership skills ended up toward the top, and those that liked to fire guns and ammo. We had our tank was a 5-man crew. We had the driver and the gunner who sat alongside of him, and he was just a 30 caliber armament man, but kind of a backup. The idea was in a tank as a team, and so everyone that in the tank wanted to learn at least 2 jobs, maybe 3 jobs. So if you had somebody disabled or killed or injured, that somebody could take over his job and keep the team strong. So you wanted to have your guys in your crew knowing at least a couple jobs, and it was a whole team effort. In order to have a good fighting piece of equipment, you had to have everybody doing their job, just like any other team. Where if you have your only team is only as good as your weakest members. So if everybody wasn't pulling together, and that was after we got past basic, that in the rest of the years, that's what you really worked on. You're getting your crew to work together and know how to fight if you had to, and to use equipment the way it was intended to be used.
So, do you believe that if you were to go to war, did your training help prepare you at all in any ways for it, both mental and physical?
You definitely wouldn't want to go to war without training. First of all, be physically fit to do the jobs that you have to do, and sometimes go beyond that. And without the training and the leadership, it would be a waste of time in combat. I wouldn't want to be in a tank with guys that didn't know what they were doing or couldn't do their job. So it's an integral part, being physically capable and mentally capable of doing the job and working together. Yeah, I think that's what made a strong unit, is just being prepared to do what you have to do.
And when you had your job, what training did you guys do to help prepare you for, say, the Korean or the Vietnam War that you guys were stationed around?
Well, and when we were in our unit at Buffalo, when we weren't at the summer camp, we had classes, and I had classes just about every session. We worked on different items of our training. We studying about parts of the tank, the way the tanks operated, where you wanted to operate the tanks, and by giving classes, because I had to learn and bone up in order to give classes, so I had to improve myself. I learned more, and hopefully I could pass that information along to the guys because most of it, we had Buffalo, we did have a couple of tanks, but they were the M47s and old models, but it's something we could drive around. But when we went down to camp, particularly Fort Knox, we had the M48s, which were a better piece of equipment, and so we actually got a lot better training on those. And basically, when you went to summer camp, you got down there and you were assigned a tank, and when you got done with the tour of 2 weeks, the tank had to come back in the same condition that it went out in. So the first thing we did, we took the fenders off, because when you're out in the woods and that, you crush the fenders up, and that they have to be straightened and put back on to pass inspection and you turn your tank back in. So the first thing we did is always took the fenders off, so we didn't have to deal with that, and so you could return your tank a little bit easier. So these are the little things you learn, as you go along. But there's a lot of training, a lot of involvement in a tank unit. It's a lot more complicated, I think, than basic infantry, where your squad in infantry is a team, but a tank unit is more of a team, and you really have to learn to work together. So it is important, all of those things.
And do you guys do any training exercises to prepare you for, say, gunfire or explosions during war?
When we were down at Knox, we were always out on the range. We had live ammo on the range. We did the 30, 50 caliber on the range, and we did the 90 millimeter, which was kind of exciting because you don't get a chance to shoot the big gun very often. And we were shooting at targets a mile away, but a tank can lob a round out 2 or 3 miles on the 90 millimeter. So it was kind of a lot of fun shooting the 90s, except that in a buttoned-up tank, when you fire the 90 millimeters, you have an awful lot of smoke and crap, and it's not very pleasant in the tank, even when you have the ventilators and that running. So it is a tough condition to work under, but it's still fun to put the big rounds out. And when you're in the tank, there's a lot of recoil. When you fire a 90 round, the tank really rocks, and it's a lot of fun doing that. But we did a lot of firing on the 30s and the 50 caliber. The tank commander on an M48 had a 50 caliber mounted on top, and he fired that, and then the gunner used a 30 caliber on the side. That was and then for the personal weapons, we carried a 45 with a shoulder holster, because when you're going in and out of the turret, you don't want to have a side holster hooking on so that our 45 was right here. And then as a personal weapon, we had what we called the 45 caliber grease guns. They were just a little submachine gun with probably about a 12-inch barrel, but they had a lot of firepower because they had a little belted link on them, and you could put 25 rounds out. in a real hurry. That was a lot of fun on the range shooting those things because you start down here and as soon as you pull the trigger, it would just go up. But they had to put all the firepower, and that was the main thing. It was close combat, equipment like when you're trying to get out of a tank. If you had a situation where you lost a track or your tank was disabled and you needed to get out, you needed a little bit of quick firepower. So the 45 grease guns were the weapon of interest.
And during training, do you guys ever do a crawl under barbed wire with live ammo being fired over you?
That we did in our basic training the first 8 weeks. Yeah, they did. They had the 30 calibers and they had the water cooled barrels, so they were continuous fire. And they just said, "Don't get up." Every once in a while, they had a fatality on the infiltration course where when they had the live fire, and it never happened when I was down there. But they always talk about the instances when somebody got disorientated or scared and jumped up, and the bullets are flying. They're probably, they say that I would guess they're probably maybe 5 feet over your head, so you'd have to really get up. And they also actually watered the infiltration course, and so they made it really, really nasty. It was a one-time thing. You went out there, and they had the explosive devices in the cans and that they would detonate. So they made, try to make realistic battle scenes. But after that, we weren't too concerned with the infantry because we had the tanks. But it was a really interesting training. That was the big day, I think, if you want to call it a big day in basic training. That when you went through the infiltration course, and they had the other stuff, where you did the courses, for time and record and that. But the infiltration course was something else. And then we probably spent, I don't know, we probably spent an hour out there by the time you got down, and it was a pretty good crawl, and they made you spend time in there with the explosives and just get kind of used to the stuff going off. But it was an experience of a lifetime. You'll probably never forget that one.
Do you have any questions? Not specifically. I believe that should be good. Thank you.
Okay, all right.